Whispers echo through the marble halls of the Vatican, murmuring of a secretive organization that claims to sanctify daily life while weaving invisible threads of influence into the highest echelons of power. Is it a path to holiness, or a hidden force shaping the very course of the modern church? Welcome to KTK History, where we unearth the shadows behind the world's most secretive orders, the hidden chapters of faith, and the conspiracies few dare to confront. Today, we invite you to journey with us into the heart of the Catholic Church, where Opus Dei, a name cloaked in both reverence and suspicion, stands as one of the most controversial religious organizations of our time. Throughout the early years of the 20th century, Europe convulsed under the weight of wars, crises, and bloody revolutions. Across its grand squares, the crack of gunfire and the roar of angry crowds echoed off ancient stone walls, signaling the birth of a new age, drenched in uncertainty. Faith itself came under siege as the Church faced mounting criticism for appearing outdated and powerless against the relentless tide of modernity. In hushed cathedrals, worn wooden pews resonated with the desperate prayers of souls searching for hope in a continent shrouded by spiritual crisis. In Madrid, a city trembling under the strain of political divisions and street violence, a young boy named Josemaria Escriva grew up in a devout Catholic family. He watched his parents struggle with financial hardships, saw friends fall victim to disease and unrest, and felt a growing awareness of the world's deep suffering. Yet instead of turning away in fear, he nurtured a radical dream: to transform society from within, not through weapons or revolutions, but through the conversion of hearts. As he matured, Josemaria followed his calling into the priesthood. During long hours of solitary prayer, a question haunted him. Must only those who abandon the world and retreat to monasteries find holiness? What about the men and women working tirelessly each day, who loved, struggled, and carried their burdens in ordinary life? Could they not also encounter God through their daily efforts? This idea would cling to him throughout his theological studies, slowly growing into the seed of a movement that would one day shake the very heart of the Catholic Church. After the First World War ended, Europe was left exhausted and fractured. In Spain, internal conflicts began to simmer, tearing the country into bitter factions. Amid this growing turmoil, Josemaria was ordained a priest. But rather than resign himself to parish life alone, he set out across the city, meeting laborers, students, clerks, and sharing with them a startling conviction. Anyone, whether teaching in a classroom, sweeping the streets, or managing a business, could become an instrument of God by working with honesty and offering their efforts as silent prayers. Josemaria's message stood in stark contrast to the dominant view of the time, which confined holiness to monastic life far removed from the chaos of the secular world. For him, everyday life was not an obstacle to sanctity, but the very path to it. The busy streets, the loud factories, the crowded offices could all become sacred spaces if people recognized God's presence in their smallest tasks. It was a profound promise. No one was excluded from the call to holiness. There was no need to flee the world. Instead, one should enter it fully, live with integrity, and love more deeply. Josemaria called this vision the sanctification of ordinary life. But few believed such a radical idea could work. Even some priests considered it a naive fantasy. Society, exhausted by war and weighed down by injustice, had grown suspicious of lofty ideals. Yet for Josemaria, it was precisely in this dark and desperate time that a new light was needed. On many cold nights in Madrid, as mist drifted through the silent streets, Josemaria would kneel for hours in a small, cramped room, praying for a path forward. He was convinced God had given him a mission to awaken the desire for holiness among ordinary people, but he faced immense obstacles. He had no followers, no resources, and his country was slipping into civil war. Each morning, the church bells rang out across the restless city, a steady call urging him not to give up. In those quiet, shadowed nights, as uncertainty reigned outside, the promise burning in Josemaria's heart grew ever clearer. He resolved he would not live only for himself, but would carry a light to those lost in fear and confusion, showing them that even an ordinary life could become a path to the highest sanctity. On the morning of October 2nd, 1928, sunlight filtered softly through the modest window of a room in Madrid where Father Josemaria Escriva knelt in prayer. For days he had been restless, sensing a powerful call yet unsure of what direction it would take. As he rose from his knees, a sudden clarity filled his mind. He described it as a vision given by God, revealing that his mission was to remind the world that every person, no matter their work or status, could become holy by offering daily tasks to God with love and dedication. In that moment, Opus Dei, which means work of God, was born. This ideal was unlike anything most Catholics of the time had heard. For centuries, the path to holiness was thought to require withdrawal from the world, a life of cloistered contemplation far removed from the distractions and temptations of society. Monks, nuns, and priests living apart from secular life were seen as the standard-bearers of sanctity. Ordinary men and women, burdened by family, work, and worries, were told to seek salvation mainly through sacraments and Sunday worship. But Josemaria's vision shattered those boundaries. He saw every office, every classroom, every kitchen as a potential sanctuary where a person could unite their efforts with God's will. From the very start, Josemaria faced skepticism, even within the church. Many clergy doubted the wisdom of telling ordinary people they could achieve holiness without abandoning their jobs or social lives. Others worried that encouraging lay people to pursue spiritual perfection could blur the lines between clergy and laity, undermining the structure of the church. But Josemaria's conviction was unshakable. He insisted that God was calling not just priests and monks, but doctors, farmers, lawyers, secretaries, parents, and shopkeepers to sanctify the world from within. His first followers were a small group of young men, mostly university students and professionals. They met discreetly in apartments or quiet cafes, sharing meals, prayers, and discussions about how to bring faith into every detail of their lives. Together, they explored how to turn study, work, and even leisure into opportunities to grow closer to God. Each meeting deepened their sense of purpose. By striving for excellence in their professions and acting with integrity, they believed they could transform society one person at a time. Spain in the late 1920s and early 1930s was a country sliding toward chaos. Political assassinations, riots, and strikes were daily news. Madrid itself was a city of tension and fear, where ideologies clashed violently in the streets. For Josemaria and his companions, The fragile gatherings of Opus Dei were not just spiritual exercises, but acts of quiet defiance against a culture that glorified hatred and division. They offered a different path, personal holiness and service as a means to heal society's wounds. Their meetings were filled with passion and hope, but also a keen awareness of danger. Many Spaniards viewed new movements with suspicion, and the political turmoil made it easy for authorities to label unfamiliar groups as threats. Josemaria knew he had to tread carefully, yet he refused to hide his message. When he spoke to his followers, he reminded them that Jesus himself had worked as a carpenter, living among ordinary people, blessing the common tasks of daily life. Holiness, he said, must not be reserved for a select few, but be within reach for everyone. The birth of this ideal was not marked by grand ceremonies or official decrees. There were no processions, no formal announcements, only whispered conversations and shared dreams among a handful of young people hungry for meaning. Yet it was precisely this humble, almost invisible beginning that gave Opus Dei its unique strength. Without imposing structures or rigid rules, the group spread organically, driven by personal conviction rather than external pressure. In these early days, Josemaria encouraged his followers to deepen their prayer lives and to seek spiritual direction, but above all, he taught them that their first duty was to be excellent in their professions. He told them that a sloppy job, an indifferent attitude, or dishonest work could never please God. Only by striving for the highest standards, by treating colleagues and customers with respect, by facing every challenge with perseverance, could they sanctify their work and offer it as a living prayer. As word of this radical idea slowly spread, more young men and women found themselves drawn to it. They came not because of promises of power or wealth, but because they yearned for a deeper purpose in a world tearing itself apart. They recognized in Josemaria a leader who truly believed holiness belonged in the midst of life, not outside it. This was how, in the quiet corners of Madrid, an ideal began to take root. It grew not through force, but through conviction, not through grand designs, but through small daily acts of faith and love. It was an ideal that would soon face unimaginable trials, but its foundation laid in these humble beginnings would prove strong enough to survive even the fiercest storms to come. As the small community around Josemaria Escriva began to grow, it became clear that inspiration alone was not enough. For the vision of sanctifying ordinary life to take root and thrive, it needed structure, discipline, and a method to help people live it out. Josemaria understood this from the beginning. He knew that good intentions could easily fade without concrete practices to sustain them. So he began shaping a system of spiritual formation that would become the backbone of Opus Dei, a path designed to integrate prayer, work, and personal growth into a unified journey toward holiness. The first element of this formation was a deep commitment to daily prayer. Josemaria taught his followers to set aside specific moments each day to speak with God in silence, to read Scripture, and to examine their consciences honestly. This was not meant to be a rigid ritual, but a living conversation, one that would help them see God's presence in every moment. Morning offerings, brief pauses during the day to lift their minds to God, and nightly reflections all became part of their daily rhythm. Through these habits, they learned to carry an awareness of the divine into even the busiest hours of work. The second key was spiritual direction. Josemaria believed that holiness was a personal path, but no one could walk it alone. He encouraged members to seek regular guidance from experienced spiritual directors who could help them discern their struggles, recognize their strengths, and grow in virtue. These confidential conversations provided both encouragement and gentle correction, fostering an environment of accountability without coercion. It was a space where individuals could reflect honestly on their lives, receive advice grounded in faith, and commit to concrete steps for improvement. A third essential practice was participation in the sacraments. Josemaria insisted that frequent confession and the regular reception of the Eucharist were indispensable. Confession was not merely a duty, but a means to cleanse the soul, renew commitment, and gain strength to continue striving for holiness. The Eucharist, he taught, was the center of Christian life, a moment of intimate union with Christ that nourished the desire to bring love into every aspect of daily existence. Beyond these spiritual foundations, Opus Dei introduced a distinctive approach to professional life. Josemaria urged his followers to pursue excellence in their work, seeing it not simply as a way to earn a living, but as a service to society and an offering to God. He warned against mediocrity, laziness, and dishonesty, teaching that even the smallest task deserved full attention and care. A well-crafted report, a clean home, a thoughtful lesson plan, or a carefully prepared meal could all become prayers if done with love and integrity. To support this integration of faith and work, members gathered regularly for circles and recollections. Circles were small meetings where they discussed spiritual topics, shared experiences, and encouraged one another. Recollections were longer monthly gatherings that offered time for prayer, meditation, and reflection, helping participants renew their focus on living their faith in the middle of the world. These meetings built a sense of fraternity, reminding each member that they were not alone in their struggle to grow in holiness. Another element of formation was a spirit of mortification, which meant practicing small acts of self-denial to strengthen the will and unite one's sufferings with Christ's sacrifice. This did not always involve dramatic gestures, but could be as simple as accepting inconvenience with patience, offering up discomfort without complaint, or renouncing a small pleasure as an act of love. For some, it also included traditional penances like wearing a cilice or using the discipline, though these were voluntary and approached with caution, meant to cultivate humility and dependence on God rather than pride. Josemaria also emphasized the importance of human virtues, such as sincerity, loyalty, industriousness, and cheerfulness. He taught that holiness did not mean becoming a gloomy or rigid person, but radiating joy and kindness. Opus Dei's formation aimed to help members become better friends, more attentive spouses, more compassionate parents, and more honest professionals. By striving to embody these virtues, they could give credible witness to the beauty of a life lived for God. Education was another cornerstone. Opus Dei encouraged continuous intellectual and professional development. Members were urged to study, deepen their understanding of their fields, and engage with culture and society. Josemaria believed that Christians should not withdraw from the world, but contribute to it with competence and creativity, becoming salt and light in every environment. He often repeated that ignorance was an enemy of faith and that Catholics must be well prepared to serve others effectively. Finally, the method of formation fostered a universal call to holiness. Everyone, regardless of background, profession, or personal weaknesses, was invited to pursue sanctity. There were no privileged classes or special categories. Lay people and priests alike were called to the same standard of heroic virtue. This radical inclusivity was revolutionary in its time and remains one of the most distinctive features of Opus Dei today. By combining daily prayer, spiritual direction, sacramental life, professional excellence, fraternal support, personal sacrifice, cultivation of virtue, and ongoing education, Josemaria forged a comprehensive path of formation that integrated faith and life completely. This method did not promise quick results or easy solutions. Instead, it called for perseverance, trust in God, and the humility to begin again after every failure. Through it, countless ordinary people discovered that holiness was not a distant dream, but a practical possibility in the heart of everyday life. As Spain emerged from the shadows of civil war in the late 1930s, Opus Dei faced both immense challenges and unexpected opportunities. While the country still reeled from deep political divisions and social wounds, Josemaria Escriva and his growing circle of followers continued to share their vision of sanctifying ordinary life. By the early 1940s, it became clear that Opus Dei's message was too powerful to remain confined within Spanish borders. The time had come to carry this ideal beyond the Iberian Peninsula and bring it to the world. The first steps toward international expansion were modest but determined. Young members, inspired by Josemaria's teachings, began moving to other European cities for work or study. These pioneers brought with them a quiet yet steadfast commitment to living and spreading the spirit of Opus Dei. They settled in places like Portugal, Italy, France, and the United Kingdom, gradually forming small communities where they met regularly to pray, study, and encourage each other to strive for holiness in the midst of busy professional lives. World War II made travel and communication extraordinarily difficult, but it also underscored the urgency of Opus Dei's mission. The devastation left by the conflict created a spiritual vacuum across Europe. Millions of people yearned for meaning, stability, and hope in the ruins of bombed-out cities and fractured societies. Josemaria believed that this was precisely the moment to bring the message of sanctifying daily work to a continent desperate for rebuilding. Even while Spain itself was isolated politically, Opus Dei's lay members found creative ways to reach beyond its borders. Rome soon became a crucial center for this expansion. In 1946, Josemaria moved to the Eternal City, convinced that Opus Dei's future depended on its relationship with the Vatican. From his modest quarters, he worked tirelessly to explain the organization's charism to church officials, clarify misunderstandings, and lay the foundation for formal recognition. At the same time, he encouraged his followers to establish centers in cities across Europe, places where people could receive spiritual formation and support while remaining fully engaged in their professions and family lives. The post-war years also opened doors to the Americas. In the early 1950s, Opus Dei members crossed the Atlantic to countries like Mexico, Argentina, and the United States. They arrived as students, professionals, or teachers, but always carried the same mission: to spread the conviction that every honest job could become a path to holiness. They founded study centers and residence halls for students, offered retreats and talks, and helped countless young people and professionals discover a new way to live their faith in everyday circumstances. As Opus Dei established itself in new lands, it adapted to the diverse cultures and traditions it encountered. Members learned new languages, respected local customs, and sought to integrate the organization's spirit into each society without imposing foreign models. In Latin America, for example, they focused on addressing poverty and educational inequality, creating technical schools and programs to uplift the poor. In North America, they engaged with universities, business communities, and families, offering spiritual guidance that resonated with the challenges of modern urban life. By the 1960s, Opus Dei had expanded to more than a dozen countries. Its centers welcomed people from all walks of life: factory workers, lawyers, farmers, teachers, homemakers, and university students. In every setting, they emphasized that personal holiness was not a privilege of a spiritual elite, but a universal call from God to everyone. This radical message inspired many, but also attracted suspicion from those who feared a hidden agenda behind Opus Dei's growing network. The organization's international growth also benefited from the support of bishops and priests who saw in it a fresh and dynamic approach to lay spirituality. While some church leaders hesitated to embrace this new movement, others recognized its potential to renew faith in societies becoming increasingly secular. By encouraging lay people to see their work and family life as part of their Christian vocation, Opus Dei offered a compelling alternative to the notion that faith belonged only in private or sacred spaces. One of the most significant milestones during this period was the establishment of institutions of higher learning. In 1952, the University of Navarra was founded in Pamplona, Spain, as an ambitious project to unite academic excellence with Christian values. The success of Navarra became a model for other educational initiatives in countries such as Peru and the Philippines, where Opus Dei members established universities and technical schools aimed at forming ethical professionals who could contribute to social and economic development. Despite political instability in many regions where Opus Dei operated, the organization continued to grow steadily. Its members navigated military dictatorships, revolutions, and shifting governments, always seeking to remain faithful to their mission without aligning themselves with partisan interests. They focused on personal relationships and individual transformation, confident that by helping one person live a holy life, they could influence families, communities, and entire nations over time. By the end of the 1970s, Opus Dei had become a truly global phenomenon. From skyscrapers in New York to villages in Africa and bustling cities in Asia, its centers offered the same invitation: to find God in the midst of ordinary life. Lay members and priests worked side by side, not to dominate the world, but to serve it, convinced that every honest job done with love could build a more just and humane society. This international expansion was never driven by marketing campaigns or aggressive strategies. It spread quietly, person to person, through friendships, shared work, and the quiet witness of lives transformed by faith. This organic growth gave Opus Dei both resilience and flexibility, allowing it to adapt to new environments while remaining rooted in its founding spirit. As Opus Dei expanded rapidly in the mid-20th century, admiration and curiosity about its distinctive message were matched by a growing chorus of suspicion and criticism. What began as a small movement to help ordinary people find holiness in their daily work soon found itself accused of secrecy, manipulation, and the pursuit of power within the church and beyond. The very practices that inspired devotion in members became sources of controversy for outsiders trying to understand an organization unlike any other in the Catholic world. One of the most frequent criticisms focused on Opus Dei's reputation for secrecy. From its earliest days, the organization held private meetings for members, encouraged discretion about their involvement, and often avoided publicizing its activities. This caution was intended to protect the personal spiritual lives of members and to keep attention focused on the message rather than the organization itself. But in the eyes of critics, this secrecy suggested something to hide, something potentially dangerous lurking beneath the surface. Accusations soon followed that Opus Dei employed aggressive recruitment tactics, pressuring young people, especially university students, into joining and then isolating them from friends and family. Former members described an intense environment in which they felt compelled to attend meetings, follow strict schedules, and accept a level of control over their personal decisions. Stories spread of families who felt they had lost their sons or daughters to an organization that demanded absolute commitment and discouraged outside influences. Perhaps the most sensational criticisms centered on practices of mortification. Accounts of members wearing a cilice, a small spiked chain worn around the thigh, or using a discipline, a cord used for self-flagellation, shocked many both inside and outside the church. These practices, rooted in long Christian traditions of penance, were voluntary and meant to unite small sacrifices with the suffering of Christ. Yet for a modern world already skeptical of religious zeal, they became symbols of fanaticism and extreme asceticism, reinforcing fears that Opus Dei was a cult rather than a movement for ordinary Catholics. Beyond individual practices, concerns grew about the organization's influence in economic, educational, and political spheres. As Opus Dei members rose to positions of prominence in business, academia, and government, observers began to wonder whether they were working for personal advancement or as part of a coordinated effort to gain power for the organization. This suspicion was heightened by the group's emphasis on loyalty, discretion, and obedience, which outsiders interpreted as signs of a shadowy network operating behind the scenes. The situation was further complicated by Opus Dei's unique legal status within the Church. In 1982, Pope John Paul II granted it the designation of a personal prelature, meaning it was directly under the authority of its own prelate and the Pope, rather than local bishops. Supporters hailed this as a recognition of Opus Dei's universal mission, but critics feared it granted the group too much autonomy and diminished oversight by diocesan structures. They worried it could allow Opus Dei to act as a church within a church, operating independently from traditional checks and balances. These suspicions fueled conspiracy theories, particularly in countries where Opus Dei gained significant social or political influence. In Spain, where the movement began, some accused it of cozy relationships with authoritarian leaders, including claims of support for Francisco Franco's regime. In Latin America, rumors circulated that Opus Dei was manipulating governments to serve its interests. Even where these accusations lacked evidence, the organization's culture of discretion and the prominence of its members made it vulnerable to speculation and fear. Inside the church, Opinions on Opus Dei were deeply divided. Some bishops and theologians admired the way it inspired lay people to take their faith seriously and strive for holiness. Others expressed concerns about rigidity, elitism, and a spirituality they felt was too focused on external discipline rather than inner freedom. Debates raged in seminaries, Catholic universities, and Episcopal conferences over whether Opus Dei represented a model for the renewal of the laity or a dangerous concentration of power and influence. For many ordinary Catholics observing from afar, the mystery surrounding Opus Dei made it difficult to separate fact from rumor. Journalists and authors, intrigued by tales of secret rites and powerful networks, published exposés that often mixed truth with speculation. Television documentaries portrayed Opus Dei members as cold and calculating, living double lives behind a facade of piety. These media portrayals deepened public mistrust and sometimes caricatured a diverse and complex reality into simplistic narratives of conspiracy and control. In response to criticism, Opus Dei leaders consistently insisted that their mission was purely spiritual and pastoral. They emphasized that membership was always voluntary, that no one was forced to join or stay, and that the organization aimed only to help people grow closer to God through ordinary life. Members often spoke of how Opus Dei gave them purpose, discipline, and a renewed sense of responsibility toward their families and communities. They pointed to thousands of people quietly serving society with integrity as the true fruit of their work. Nonetheless, the tension between public suspicion and private devotion has remained a defining feature of Opus Dei's identity. The movement's rapid growth, unconventional structure, and practices that seemed alien to modern sensibilities ensured that controversy would follow it wherever it spread. Some saw Opus Dei as a beacon of spiritual renewal, calling lay people to heroic virtue in a secularized world. Others saw a secretive and potentially dangerous organization, wielding influence behind closed doors. These debates have never fully subsided. They continue to shape perceptions of Opus Dei, coloring every discussion of its legacy and raising enduring questions about the nature of power, holiness, and the role of lay movements in the Catholic Church. As Opus Dei grew from a small circle of believers into a global organization, its relationship with the popes of the 20th and 21st centuries played a decisive role in shaping its future. From the beginning, José María Escrivá sought the blessing of the Holy See, convinced that Opus Dei's mission to bring holiness into ordinary life could only flourish if it were fully united with the heart of the Church. This conviction guided every major step of the organization's evolution and defined its response to praise and criticism alike. During the papacy of Pope Pius XII, Opus Dei began to receive formal approval from Rome. In 1947, the Vatican recognized it as a secular institute, an important milestone that allowed Opus Dei to operate internationally and recruit lay members with the Church's official sanction. This recognition affirmed Josemaria's vision of sanctifying everyday work, but it was only the beginning of Opus Dei's complex journey through church structures and canon law. Pope Paul VI, who led the Church through the tumultuous years of the Second Vatican Council and its aftermath, also showed support for Opus Dei's emphasis on the universal call to holiness. The Council itself proclaimed that every Christian, not only priests and religious, was called to strive for sanctity in their lives. This teaching echoed the very core of Opus Dei's spirituality, providing new legitimacy and enthusiasm for its mission. Yet debates within the Church over the role of lay movements continued, and Opus Dei's rapid expansion and unique identity raised both hopes and concerns among bishops and theologians. A turning point arrived with the papacy of John Paul II. From the moment of his election in 1978, he signaled a commitment to renewing the laity's role in evangelization and to defending the dignity of work. These were principles deeply aligned with Opus Dei's founding vision. John Paul admired how Opus Dei empowered ordinary Catholics to transform society through their professional and family lives. His pontificate offered not only encouragement, but also decisive support that would forever alter Opus Dei's status in the Church. In 1982, after years of discussion and preparation, John Paul II established Opus Dei as the first and only personal prelature in the Church's history. This new canonical structure recognized Opus Dei's unique nature as a movement of lay people and priests united by a common spirituality but dispersed across dioceses worldwide. As a personal prelature, Opus Dei was given its own prelate, who answered directly to the Pope, allowing it to operate independently of local bishops while remaining fully part of the Church. Supporters hailed this move as a brilliant adaptation to the modern world, giving Opus Dei the freedom to pursue its mission across borders and cultures. For critics, however, the personal prelature became a lightning rod. They feared it created a parallel hierarchy within the Church, unaccountable to diocesan bishops and potentially undermining unity. Debates raged over whether the structure was a visionary solution or a dangerous concentration of authority. Yet for Opus Dei members, the decision was a profound confirmation that their vocation had a rightful place in the Church's life. John Paul's relationship with Opus Dei went beyond institutional matters. He admired the personal holiness of Josemaria Escriva, whose beatification in 1992 and canonization in 2002 he personally oversaw. In his homilies, the Pope praised Escriva as a pioneer who reminded the modern world of the sacredness of everyday life. This public recognition strengthened Opus Dei's standing, encouraging thousands to join and deepening the loyalty of those already committed. Under Pope Benedict XVI, Opus Dei continued to find support. Benedict shared a theological appreciation for the group's emphasis on integrating faith and reason, and he valued its commitment to intellectual formation and professional excellence. He encouraged Opus Dei members to engage in dialogue with the modern world, using their expertise to bear witness to the truth of the gospel in every sphere of society. With the election of Pope Francis, a new chapter began. Although his pastoral style and emphasis on simplicity contrasted with some perceptions of Opus Dei as elitist, Francis has affirmed the importance of lay movements in evangelization. He has also challenged all Catholics to go to the peripheries of society, a call many Opus Dei members see as an invitation to live their vocation with renewed humility and generosity. Francis's focus on mercy and care for the marginalized has inspired Opus Dei to examine how its formation programs and apostolates can better serve the poor and excluded. Throughout these papacies, Opus Dei's fidelity to the Pope has remained a cornerstone of its identity. Its motto, "With Peter to Jesus through Mary," expresses unwavering loyalty to the Holy Father as the successor of Saint Peter. This allegiance has shaped its response to controversies, guided its expansion, and defined its sense of mission. Despite criticism, Opus Dei has never wavered in its conviction that unity with the Pope is essential to authentic Christian life. The relationship between Opus Dei and the popes illustrates a delicate balance between innovation and tradition, between the freedom of lay people to live their faith fully and the authority of the Church to guide and protect them. It is a story of mutual influence, where popes have shaped Opus Dei's path, and Opus Dei has, in turn, contributed to the Church's understanding of the laity's role in the world. Among the many things that set Opus Dei apart within the Catholic Church, none has sparked more debate or confusion than its legal status as a personal prelature. This unique canonical structure, created specifically for Opus Dei by Pope John Paul II in 1982, remains one of the least understood aspects of the organization, shrouded in both intrigue and misconception. To many, it seems like a technical term with little consequence. Yet for those who study the inner workings of the Church, it represents a bold innovation and a source of enduring controversy. Before Opus Dei became a personal prelature, it was classified as a secular institute. This arrangement recognized the group's mission to sanctify the world from within, but limited its scope and did not fully reflect its distinctive identity. Josemaria Escriva dreamed of a structure that would allow Opus Dei to transcend the traditional boundaries of parishes and dioceses. He wanted members to remain fully immersed in the world, yet united by a shared spiritual path, regardless of where they lived or worked. The solution came in the form of the personal prelature, a new category of ecclesiastical jurisdiction defined by the Second Vatican Council, but never before implemented. A personal prelature is organized around people rather than geographic territories, with a prelate who oversees the faithful affiliated with it. In Opus Dei's case, this means that its members, whether lay people or priests, are under the pastoral care of the Opus Dei prelate instead of the local bishop in their area, though they still belong to their local dioceses and parishes. This arrangement provides Opus Dei with exceptional flexibility. Members can move from country to country or city to city and remain connected to the same spiritual family. Formation programs, retreats, and pastoral care are coordinated globally, ensuring consistency in Opus Dei's mission and teaching. This international cohesion has helped the organization maintain its distinctive identity and adapt rapidly to new cultural contexts. Supporters of the personal prelature model see it as a brilliant response to the modern world's mobility and globalization. They argue that as Catholics increasingly live and work far from their places of birth, a structure not tied to geography can better support their spiritual needs. They believe it allows lay people to receive guidance tailored to their professions and circumstances, fostering a sense of unity among people who share a common vocation despite being scattered across continents. Yet critics have raised serious concerns. Some theologians and church leaders fear that by placing members under the authority of a prelate independent of local bishops, the personal prelature undermines the traditional hierarchical structure of the Church. They worry it creates a parallel system in which Opus Dei operates with too much autonomy, free from the oversight that diocesan bishops normally exercise over Catholics in their territories. This fear has fueled accusations that Opus Dei acts like a church within a church, pursuing its own agenda beyond the control of local ecclesiastical authorities. The Vatican has repeatedly clarified that personal prelatures are fully part of the Church's structure and subject to canon law. Opus Dei. Members remain parishioners of their local churches and must obey the diocesan bishop in matters unrelated to the prelature's specific mission. Sacraments such as marriage and baptism still take place under the jurisdiction of the local parish. Yet, the perception of independence has been difficult to dispel, especially in regions where misunderstandings about Opus Dei's role persist. Adding to the complexity is the fact that Opus Dei includes both lay people and priests. Priests of Opus Dei are incardinated into the prelature, meaning they belong directly to it rather than to a diocese. Lay members, however, are not clerics and continue to live fully secular lives while participating in the prelature's spiritual activities. This mix of clergy and laity within a single jurisdiction is unprecedented and has sparked debates over whether it blurs the lines between different states of life in the Church. For many Catholics, the technicalities of canon law remain abstract, yet the personal prelature has real effects on how Opus Dei functions. It enables the organization to offer consistent spiritual direction, training, and community life across borders. It also allows Opus Dei's leadership to respond swiftly to new opportunities or challenges without navigating the complex patchwork of diocesan jurisdictions that usually govern Catholic ministry. This autonomy has been key to Opus Dei's ability to expand quickly and maintain a unified identity. At the same time, the personal prelature status places a heavy responsibility on Opus Dei's leaders to maintain transparency, fidelity to church teaching, and respect for local bishops and communities. The Vatican expects prelatures to complement, not compete with, diocesan structures. In practice, this balance has sometimes proven delicate, requiring ongoing dialogue with local church authorities to ensure cooperation and mutual understanding. The unique legal status of Opus Dei remains a source of fascination and unease. Supporters see it as a prophetic innovation, anticipating the needs of a globalized laity seeking holiness in every corner of the world. Critics worry it concentrates power in ways that can lead to secrecy or abuse. Regardless of where one stands, there is no question that the personal prelature has given Opus Dei a distinctive place in the life of the Catholic Church, enabling it to pursue its mission with a level of freedom and cohesion unmatched by any other lay movement. Beyond debates over canon law or controversies in the media, the truest face of Opus Dei can often be seen in the lives of its members, men and women scattered across the world who quietly strive to live out its message each day. From busy city offices to quiet rural farms, they embody the organization's conviction that holiness is possible in any setting, and that the everyday tasks of work, family, and friendship can become paths to God. Many members of Opus Dei are professionals who see their careers as more than a way to earn a living. They approach their work with a sense of mission, striving to serve others with competence and integrity. A teacher prepares lessons with care and patience, recognizing that shaping young minds is a sacred responsibility. A doctor treats patients with compassion and respect, seeing in each person a reflection of Christ. An architect designs buildings not only for beauty, but also for the well-being of the people who will live or work in them. Each day, these members offer their efforts as a prayer, convinced that the quality of their work can give glory to God. One of the most striking characteristics of Opus Dei's members is their diversity. They include engineers, farmers, artists, nurses, scientists, homemakers, taxi drivers, students, and retirees. Some hold powerful positions in government or business, while others live simple lives in humble circumstances. What unites them is not social status or profession, but a shared commitment to seek holiness by doing their ordinary tasks with extraordinary love. Their witness often extends to their families. Many married members, known as supernumeraries, find in Opus Dei's spirituality a source of strength to build stronger marriages and raise children in an atmosphere of faith, respect, and joy. They aim to make their homes places of warmth and generosity, where hospitality is offered freely and kindness becomes a daily habit. In the quiet heroism of faithful spouses and loving parents, the ideals of Opus Dei come alive in ways that doctrines or laws alone could never express. Some members, known as numeraries, choose to live celibately and often reside in Opus Dei centers. They dedicate themselves fully to the organization's mission while continuing professional work in the secular world. Their lives are marked by discipline and a deep commitment to prayer, study, and service. They often support the formation of other members, organize educational or social initiatives, and provide stability to the communities where Opus Dei is present. A smaller group, called associates, also live celibately, but typically remain in their own homes, rather than Opus Dei centers. They balance their professional lives and family responsibilities with a quiet dedication to spiritual growth, supporting the mission of Opus Dei in countless unseen ways. Whether they are working late in a hospital, teaching in a crowded classroom, or managing a small business, they seek to bring light and hope into places where faith can sometimes seem absent. The priests of Opus Dei, incarnated into the prelature, devote their lives to providing sacramental and spiritual care for members and many others who seek guidance. They celebrate Mass, hear confessions, offer spiritual direction, and accompany people in moments of joy and sorrow. Their work allows Opus Dei members to receive consistent pastoral care rooted in a deep understanding of the spirituality they share. Among these diverse members are stories of remarkable generosity and perseverance. There is the lawyer who, despite demanding cases, spends evenings offering free legal advice to immigrants struggling with paperwork. There is the homemaker who organizes meals for neighbors during illness or grief, quietly building a community of compassion. There is the university professor who mentors struggling students, believing every person deserves a chance to flourish. These small, hidden acts of service form the heart of Opus Dei's impact on the world. At the same time, members strive to grow in personal virtues like honesty, humility, patience, and courage. They learn to ask forgiveness when they fail, to begin again with hope, and to see setbacks not as defeats, but as opportunities to rely more deeply on God's grace. This continuous effort to convert the ordinary into something holy creates a ripple effect, influencing colleagues, friends, and communities in ways that may never make headlines, but profoundly shape lives. For many, the most powerful testimony of Opus Dei's spirit is not found in official statements or statistics, but in the quiet example of members who live their faith with consistency and joy. Their presence challenges stereotypes and opens hearts to the possibility that holiness is not reserved for extraordinary people or moments, but can blossom in the familiar routines of daily life. This living witness, multiplied across countless cities and countries, remains the most compelling proof of Opus Dei's mission. It reveals an organization not primarily concerned with power or prestige, but with helping people discover that God walks beside them in every step, in every task, and in every ordinary moment they offer with love. At the dawn of the 21st century, Opus Dei had already become a well-established presence in many countries, yet it remained largely unknown to the wider public. That all changed dramatically in 2003 with the publication of a novel that would ignite both fascination and outrage across the globe. Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code, a fast-paced thriller weaving conspiracy, murder, and ancient secrets, placed Opus Dei at the center of its gripping plot, casting the organization in the role of a powerful and sinister force, willing to do anything to protect a hidden truth. The novel's staggering success took everyone by surprise. Millions of copies flew off shelves, translations spread to dozens of languages, and soon the Da Vinci Code was a cultural phenomenon. As readers raced through its pages, they encountered vivid descriptions of Opus Dei members engaging in extreme acts of self-mortification, secret rituals, and ruthless violence. One character, portrayed as a sadistic monk, captured imaginations and reinforced dark stereotypes, even though Opus Dei has no monks and the events described were fictional. Almost overnight, Opus Dei became a household name, but not in the way its members might have hoped. Media outlets seized on the controversy, publishing articles questioning whether the organization truly operated like the shadowy cabal described in the book. Television specials and documentaries explored Opus Dei's history and practices, often mixing real facts with sensational speculation. Reporters camped outside Opus Dei centers, eager for glimpses of a secret world they imagined to be filled with drama and intrigue. For Opus Dei itself, the sudden storm of attention was both a crisis and an opportunity. Leaders quickly realized that ignoring the novel's impact was impossible. They responded with public statements clarifying what Opus Dei is and what it is not, explaining that members were ordinary people striving for holiness in daily life, not secret agents of a dark conspiracy. They granted interviews, opened some centers to journalists, and launched websites to address misconceptions directly. These efforts aimed to correct false impressions, but often struggled to compete with the gripping allure of Dan Brown's narrative. The media frenzy also revealed a deeper challenge. Many people knew little about the inner workings of the Catholic Church or its lay movements, and the Da Vinci Code filled that gap with a compelling, if wildly inaccurate, story. Critics of the novel pointed out its historical errors and misrepresentations, but for many readers, the line between fiction and reality became blurred. Rumors and myths about Opus Dei, long confined to obscure corners, suddenly became mainstream topics of conversation. Within the Catholic community, reactions were mixed. Some saw the book as an attack on the Church and a deliberate attempt to sow doubt about its institutions and beliefs. Others viewed it as a wake-up call, a reminder that organizations like Opus Dei needed to communicate more openly with the world to prevent misunderstandings from taking root. In parishes, schools, and families, debates flared over the novel's claims, with many turning to priests and knowledgeable Catholics for answers. For members of Opus Dei, the experience was deeply personal. Some found themselves facing awkward questions from colleagues or neighbors about practices they had never hidden, but had never imagined would spark worldwide controversy. Others worried about safety, fearing that hostility stoked by misinformation could turn into harassment or worse. Yet many also saw the moment as a chance to share their faith, patiently explaining what Opus Dei truly teaches and how its spirituality had enriched their lives. In time, as public interest moved on to new stories, the media storm subsided. Yet the impact of the Da Vinci Code lingered. Even years later, the name Opus Dei still conjures images of secrecy and fanaticism for some, shaped less by reality than by the shadowy world of a best-selling novel. At the same time, the controversy pushed Opus Dei to greater transparency, inspiring efforts to explain its mission with clarity and welcome more dialogue with journalists, scholars, and curious visitors. Ironically, while Dan Brown's fictional tale cast Opus Dei in a villainous light, it also made the organization more visible than ever before. Millions who had never heard of it were introduced to its name and, in some cases, drawn to learn more about the real story behind the headlines. In this unexpected way, a storm of suspicion became a catalyst for conversations about faith, holiness, and the possibility of finding God in everyday life. As Opus Dei moves further into the 21st century, it stands at a unique crossroads. Few organizations in the modern church have inspired such intense devotion among their members or provoked as much speculation and debate beyond their walls. Its legacy is already profound, but the full meaning of its place in history remains an unfolding story, filled with both admiration and lingering questions. For supporters, Opus Dei's greatest legacy lies in its revolutionary message, that every person, regardless of their job or social standing, is called to holiness through the ordinary moments of daily life. This simple yet radical idea has transformed countless lives, helping people find purpose and peace in their families, workplaces, and communities. Many credit Opus Dei with rekindling a sense of personal responsibility for faith in a world that often relegates spirituality to the margins. The fruits of this legacy can be seen in the network of educational institutions, social initiatives, and professional training centers established by Opus Dei members around the globe. Universities, schools, and technical programs inspired by its ethos have provided opportunities for thousands, especially in regions where poverty and lack of access to quality education have long stifled hope. In these quiet, patient efforts to uplift others, the ideals of Opus Dei have taken root in ways that statistics alone can never capture. Within the Church, Opus Dei has also contributed to a deeper appreciation of the role of laypeople. Long before Vatican II formally declared the universal call to holiness, Josemaria Escriva preached that sanctity was not reserved for a select few in monasteries, but was the duty and privilege of every Christian. This insight has reshaped Catholic teaching, inspiring countless lay movements and changing how many believers view their relationship with God and the world. Yet as with any institution of lasting impact, Opus Dei's legacy is not without complexity. Critics continue to raise concerns about its culture of discipline and secrecy, wondering whether the demands it places on members can sometimes cross the line from inspiration into undue pressure. Stories from former members who felt controlled or misunderstood remind us that even a mission rooted in good intentions can lead to pain if lived out without balance and compassion. Questions also persist about the organization's influence. How much power does Opus Dei really wield within the corridors of the Vatican or in national governments? Is its network of professionals a force for good, quietly spreading Christian values through example? Or could it become a mechanism for advancing private agendas? While most investigations have found no evidence of coordinated political schemes, the organization's unique structure and global reach continue to fuel speculation. At the personal level, many wonder whether Opus Dei's rigorous approach to spiritual life, so different from the more informal, flexible paths preferred by many modern believers, will remain attractive to future generations. In a culture that values individual choice and questions authority, the emphasis on obedience, discipline, and self-denial may seem foreign or even threatening. Whether Opus Dei can adapt its formation programs without compromising its founding ideals will be crucial to its relevance in years to come. Another dimension of Opus Dei's legacy is the figure of Josemaria Escriva himself. Canonized by Pope John Paul II, he is honored as a saint by the Church, yet his life and teachings remain a subject of study and debate among historians and theologians. Was he a prophetic voice, calling people back to the heart of the gospel, or a complex figure whose personality shaped both the strengths and controversies of the organization he founded? The answer may lie somewhere in between, reflecting the mystery at the heart of every human life. What is clear is that Opus Dei has forever altered the spiritual landscape of the Catholic Church. Its existence challenges assumptions about what holiness looks like and reminds believers that God can be found in the simplest of tasks. It stands as both a sign of hope and a mirror, reflecting the ongoing tensions between tradition and change, authority and freedom, secrecy and openness. Perhaps this is the greatest unanswered question of all: whether Opus Dei's story will ultimately be remembered as a daring renewal of Christian life or as a cautionary tale about the complexities of faith, power, and human imperfection. For now, the organization continues to invite people to find sanctity where they are, to see every ordinary moment as an extraordinary chance to love, and to trust that in the hidden corners of daily life, God is already waiting. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the hidden world of Opus Dei, where faith, power, and mystery intertwine in ways few dare to explore. If you found this story thought-provoking, do not forget to subscribe to KTK History for more in-depth investigations into the secret chapters of our past. Leave us a comment with your thoughts or questions, and share this video with friends who love uncovering the untold stories that shape our world. Until next time, stay curious, stay questioning, and remember, history is never as simple as it seems.